Don't let the baby die. That's what my sister said to me after I gave birth to my son. I had just graduated from college. I had so many plans, and a baby was not one of them. I was really overwhelmed with the idea of raising a human. Actually, I was a mess. My sister came up to help me and to meet her new nephew. And one point, she's holding her new nephew, and she looks at me and she says, "Manda, don't let the baby die. Can you do that?" I paused. I thought, yeah, I can do that. Yeah. At that moment, I centered in and I thought, don't let the baby die. My sister helped me take a complex idea and make it into a very simple concept. She gave me a gift that day. Now, every time it's my son's birthday, I text my whole family and I say, he's still alive. My son is 16 years old, so. For most of my life, I've associated the word focus with punishment. The earliest example I can give is in grade school. The teacher would say, "Pay attention, students. Focus, students." It wasn't until recently I realized the positivity in focusing. When we focus, we can help shape some of our life's most critical decisions. When I was a sophomore in high school, my parents divorced. It was awful. I just wanted to get away from that pain. But at 16, the only way to get out of town was to go to college. So for 2 years, I focused on getting out of town. I graduated high school, and I was accepted into 3 colleges. I was denied into Spelman, waitlisted at UCLA, and accepted at UC Berkeley. What I did not know then was at 16, I was honing my skills for focusing for years to come. I have a niece. Her name is Chantel. We're 6 years apart. She was like a little sister to me. My first designer purse was now her first designer purse. She was the new me. And I got to treat her like my sisters treated me. Bad. She came over often. She was a soft spot in my heart. I went to her soccer games. I was at her high school graduation. And I would have been at her college graduation. But her life was cut short. Her boyfriend murdered her. When it was time to prepare for her funeral, her mother called me and asked me to come to the funeral home to help with her hair and makeup. I went. I entered the funeral home from the back of the room. There was this long aisle between the pews. The room was this pink, hazy color, and it was cold. I felt like I ran down that aisle, but it was probably the slowest I ever walked. I came down the aisle, and there at the front, surrounded by beautiful flowers, was my Chantel on a prep table. Her mother standing behind her, looking over her body at me. She said in a very hurried voice, "See, look, Mandy, can you help?" And she grabbed my niece's shirt. I looked back at her. I touched my niece's cold body. I breathed, and I said, "Yes, I can help." She began to direct me to what she liked and how she wanted her makeup. To the side of Chantel was her hair and makeup bag. I picked it up, I breathed, and I began to work. See, because at that moment, through all my hurt and pain, I had one job to do. I was there to help my niece for her final appearance. My niece died of a gunshot wound to the head. The funeral home did a nice job at making her look viewable. The right side of her face that would face the funeral attendees looked almost normal. The left side, where the gunshot wound exited, was distorted. We had to make up for that. I began to apply her makeup. I began to fix her shirt. And then it was time to do her hair. My niece's hair was her prized possession. Long, black, gorgeous hair, naturally curly, and it could be flat ironed straight. But on that day, we had to keep it curly. So I grabbed the water bottle, I sprayed her hair, I grabbed the gel, I squeezed it in my hand. I began to crunch her hair in my hands. She felt alive. And after several crunches, her hair began to tangle around my fingers. I went to remove her hair from my fingers, and it came out in my hand. At that moment, I knew my niece was dead. At that moment, I could have quit everything. I dug deep. I pushed everything down that I was feeling at that time, and I focused, and I finished. Her mom was semi-pleased, and we did what we needed to do. At that time, I was very strong for my family. A few weeks later, I sat in my car, I focused on breathing, and I let everything that ever hurt me from that incident take me over. I ugly cried. But I needed to do that. I needed to focus, to reflect on that pain. And I did. See, in order to focus, we must silence the doubtful voice in our mind. Sometimes that voice is ours. We need to shut up. In order to focus, we must find perspective. By finding perspective, we're able to see the positive and the negative, and the strength we did not know we had. Focusing on keeping my son alive helped me to be a parent. Focusing on getting out of town, away from the pain, got me to college. Focusing on being strong for my family helped me to bury my niece for her final appearance. When we focus, we make the complex simple. We find out what is most important, and we don't let the baby die. Thank you.